All right, thank you guys. I hope you can all hear me. So I think I'll be taking you through this session. And from I think last session's consensus, it was like you really wanted for us to do a recap on the forms. I think that was one of the features that we started with. And so far we've gone through the forms and the reports, the apps, how to install and such. And I very much appreciate that guys have been reaching out and doing some stuff. I think we have a gig, we have Ken, we have I think Ken from CHS who've reached out and for various items. So I think today's topic would be most on forms. We're going to do a deep dive on the forms, and from an earlier request, we're going to work on some forms that a team member had already developed. That is a gig, and it would be on one of the forms called social work adult screening form. It's just one form. We're going to see how it is being developed, how it's been hooked up, and how it reflects on the interface. So I think a small overview of the forms. Forms are kind of the tools that we use to collect data in OpenMRS or rather in Kenya EMR. So data is collected around forms. Forms are hooked into the system so that like you can identify if you want to, let's say, collect a particular set of data, you just develop a form, you put the variables so the variables are collected around the form. The forms are hooked to an encounter, and all this goes to the obs table. I think we all remember the obs table, which is a transactional table. And from that is where we do the ETLs. And I think we can all recall what Anthony taught us, that the ETLs are tables that are formed around the principle of a table per form. So, and then after doing the ETLs, which is a table per form, we are now able to do the reports that we were like doing last week. So that's like an overview of trying to show you the importance of knowing how to do the forms, because they are the easiest way to collect data around a particular discipline or area of specialization. So so I'm going to go do a deep dive of the forms. And the good thing is that this time I think we'll be having a lot of building. Once you've hooked up the forms and using some of the tools that we can be able to just refresh and see what your forms has has updated. So very quickly, I'm going to take you to my development screen. So I'm going to share with you a screen. So all of you can see my screen, my Kenya EMR screen. Otieno, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yes, so this is a typical Kenya EMR screen. So I've just highlighted one client. Let's say this Kemeli. And from here, there's one form of interest. Smaller set of this one. Yeah, so you can see we have one client. So basically this is the patient profile page. And I think from the last training, we showed you how we can configure available forms in the module application context. So what you're going to do, you're first going to see how the form looks like, how it is displayed, how it comes around here, and then you're going back to the code. So I've added one form, and this form is a courtesy of a geek, I think, from Optic. There's one form called social work adult screening form. So a scenario is like probably you have a custom, or rather you have a program within your institution for social work screening for adults. So that might not be in the standard data collection tools for Kenya EMR. So probably that's for your hospital, and you need to do forms around the social work adult screening form. So that is the context. So when you come here, when you come to the add-on module, you need to add this form in your Kenya EMR so that you're able to collect this data around the social work screening. So, and in this context, you want this form to be available for adults, and it should be available for everybody in the system who is an adult. Basically, let's say everybody in the system who is an adult. And you have some set of questions for the screening, basically the screening questions. So that is the context of which probably we say that is a requirement. So that is a requirement. So, and then you need to add this form in the available forms, as you can see. So this is the form we added. It's called social work adult screening form. And as you can see, it is available once you check in the client. So we're going to just open it. So this is the form that a geek developed. So I've just done some 2 or 3 fixes to make it display. So it's a huge form, but I'm going to probably go through each and every item so that we can see how you can customize your own form to work for you. So it's a basic form, basically. It doesn't have a lot of very complex items. So one of the things you can see is that it has a title, the social work adult screening form, and you can see it has a date, a daytime, it has a location. So, and then it has sections. So you need the phone number. So very critically, what we're going to learn today is how to add these variables and the different types of variables and how they display. So as you can see here, we have this is a numerical text box. It allows only numerals like 23. If you try to do letters, it will tell you that this is not an integer. So that means this field requires an numerical based input, and you can see it has a size limit also. You can also see we have a drop down box, and we have items or other options in the drop down box. You can see there's another numerical input box, and you can see a small star here, red star, meaning this is a required field. So those are some of the things you're going to learn how to add. Then you can see we have a text area here, and you can also kind of try to discern that it has a specific length to see how long it is. We also have another drop down with the options of, I think these are relatives. We have another numerical input box. All these. Then another one is we have a radio. A radio here, which is vertical, and it has options, and you can see the characteristics of a radio is that you can pick more than one. Then I think I touched on the numerical input. We have a next text area. So you can see the different types of input depending on what you want to, the data, or rather the data you want to collect, how it's going to be entered. As you can see, mostly there's like a principle of there's a question and an answer. So what type of answer do you want? Do you want it to be in text form? Do you want it to be in a text area? Do you want it to be a choice, or rather where you put a drop down or a radio? Do you want it to the length that you want this input to be? Do you want it to be, is it very lengthy whereby you can put like 100 characters, or do you want like a specific 10 character? You see, and then also you want to consider if basically the UI UX, or rather the outlook of the form. So all these we are going to look at them and how we can come up with them in the actual code. So, but this is an overview of what we're going to look into. And also there's another aspect of trying to validate. whereby if one input can determine whether you need to do another input or not, or rather you need to hide something and hide something, you need to disable one item, you need not disable another item. So I think in a nutshell is that we want to come up with a form whereby we want to do capacity builders to develop a form for any kind of input that you might desire, depending on your requirements for your custom form. So these are the various features that we are going to look into the form, and we'll be piggybacking with this on the interface and the code to see how to come up with them. And I think this is an overview. So we are going now directly to the code. Let me share my code. So you guys can see my screen. Otieno, can you see my screen? Hello, Otieno.
Yes.
All right. So you can see the add-on example module.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
All right. So all right. So basically, this is the add-on. This is the form that I just showed you how it displays on your Kenya EMR. So we're first going to recap on how we wired it, and then we're going to the specific variables. So as you remember, we initially said that once you have a form, the first thing you do, you have your form here. It's called social work adult screening. I think you can see I'm highlighting it on my code. So for this form, once let's say you've just developed it, the first thing you do is that you go to your metadata, you create a form. The form is called adult screening. Yeah, give it a very unique UUID. And for this purpose, we've created an encounter called social work. So the idea is that a social work encounter will encompass work or other forms or other data sets collected around the social work encounter. We've developed a form called adult screening. Both you give them unique IDs, and then you basically install them. This is the install, and then you wire them, whereby you wire the social work adult screening form to the social work encounter form. So this is basically saying that you're basically wiring the form inside the OMOD, and then you come to the module application context. In the social work, this is a social work, you call it here. So you give the unique UUID that you gave it in your metadata. That is very important. It should be the same. And then you introduce, or rather you declare the bin ID, the value on the UUID. Then you say that you declare the applications that you want them to showcase this form. So I've just called the charts and clinician applications. Those are the apps. I think you remember the apps that we had introduced. And then you give it an icon, and you call it here. As you can see, the name, the social worker, the screening form should be the same as the way you called the form when you created it. And other than that, you just add it in your configuration. So this is how you add it in your configuration, and that's it. So basically, that's a process of wiring it up. So now we are going to directly to the form. So this is the form. So the structure of the form, the first thing that I think a geek, it's a feedback to a geek. The easiest way to have these forms is to have them being .html. Don't put them XML. XML it can work, but it might give you some issues. But for starters, let's just have the .html. As we have said, the framework is so that you can utilize the HTML from form entry, which has a lot of benefits, or rather it gives you so much other tools or other libraries that you can use, like the obs. So that's why I changed it to .html. I think that's one of the feedback to a geek. So the form library has, I can say, basically three major sections. We have the JavaScript section, and then we have this is the JavaScript section. So the JavaScript section, you can help you to manipulate the form items, and mainly it's usually on it can help you to validate items on the form. It can help you to hide items on the form. It can help you to give you specific outputs. For example, like for you to display one item, something like a calculation must be true or false. So as you can see, there's a lot of whether this is true, whether this is false, whether this is equals to yes, whether this is equals to no, something like that. So it gives you, it instills logic in your form, and very critically, this is form based. One additional item on the JavaScript, it can help you, and this is mainly a kind of a library from the form entry, the form entry module that we picked. It can help you like get the latest observations of a particular variable. So like here we are saying lookup expression of this variable. So this is the latest session. So such are some of the benefits of the form entry session. But critically, I was saying that this is the JavaScript section, and advantages is to help you basically validate and instill logic in your form. The second section is this small section that we've used. It's basically the CSS section, and this one helps you to format, or rather give a very good outlook. Can I call it UI UX? So this one, like for example, here we have the variables are arranged in a tabular format. We have a simple table which have borders. I think it has borders, the coloration of the borders, how they arranged one, so that kind of they look in a very appeasing way. So I think most of us have an idea of what it's all about. So, and then the other section this is basically your HTML form section, which gives you your form. This is where you put your data, the variables, how you want them represented, and yes. So those are the three major sections we have. Yes. And on this, we still have, can I say, within the HTML section, we basically kind of have three other sections in it. So we have the headers. So you can see here div class KE form header. So this one will give you, I think you can recall when I showed you the form where we had the date section and the location section. Sorry about that. So this is the date, and you can either have just a date or a date and time. I think, is it a geek or Ken had asked me how to add time into the date section. So you can see this is HTML form entry tag. The show time is equals to true. So this one will give you the date and the time. And the most important part of this is that most of the times it will come out with the default date and time when you are having to input that form, and you won't have to basically enter or click dates and times. so it will automatically showcase. If you don't want to use the date, if you don't want to use the time, you can say show time is equals to false. That is a commentary tag. The next one is the location tag. So this is how you add the location. And it will by default highlight the location of your facility. That's your facility. So it will give you your facility name and your MFL number. So like, for example, if you're in KNH, it will give you KNH and the CCC number, so you won't have to really type it. So this is the header section. Typically, we just add the date and the location. Then we have the content section. This is the body. This is where you put all your form data, whereby you want it to. Basically, the body where you put whatever you're collecting at. And lastly, we have the form footer. This one will typically contain the enter form, or rather, if it's a form you're adding, it will basically have your submit. Yeah, so those are the three subsections of the HTML section. Now we go now to the form part of it and to the individual variables. So we'll go just up here where we start on the form content. So for example, for this particular form, we had a question of client's residential and telephone contact. So for client's residential and telephone contact information, what this form requires is a phone number, a relationship to phone owner, an alternative phone number, and a relationship for phone owner. So basically what this section requires is give us a phone number and the relationship to that person. And you should basically tick one. Tick one means you need to select one. So the first part we're going to consider is the phone number. So a phone number, I'm thinking, is a variable that usually should have probably 10 characters. And as you can see, required is true, meaning it's mandatory. So I think my friend Agik used a concept called 1639. So I can take you to my dictionary to give you an indication of how we come up with this. So you can see the way it is. There's a phone number. First we use the table. This is basically to help us arrange it, and you can see the table. The table class relates to this our CSS here up here. Our CSS up here. So it will be arranged in a very kind of a smart manner. Then we have a phone number and a relationship to that phone number. So the first thing is we need a concept ID for the phone number. So I'll take you to my Kenya EMR to show you how you search. So for example, for a gig, he used the concept ID 1639. So let us go to a dictionary and see whether he used the correct concept. So, but you can see my Kenya EMR.
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So this is how we search for concepts. So we are basically looking for a phone number concept. So you go to a dictionary and let's first try to see whether our geek is the correct phone number. As you can see, the concept ID that Agik used 1639, if you search it, it will give you the treatment sequence number. I think all of us, we can concur, probably this is not the most accurate, or rather the closest to this phone number. So probably I would, from the description of what Agik wanted, which is client's residential and telephone contact information, phone number of the cell. So probably I would ask Agik, first of all, it's a consensus that Agik wanted a phone number, but we want to know whether is it the client's phone number or it's a contact's phone number. So probably Agik could respond to that.
This client's phone number. And
So
Patrick, for your information,
yeah.
I was just using any contact. I had not started mapping them with the correct one. So that's
All right.
something which I was going to do later. But
All right,
for
no
this,
problem.
I think client's phone number.
So this is the index, the client that we really, the client that already you've highlighted. So we want that person's phone number. If that's okay, let's go to let's go to our dictionary and try to look for the nearest concept that can relate to this client's phone number. So typically what we just type like telephone, something like that. So you can see we have two. So we have telephone number of treatment supporter making of telephone call. So probably that may not be sufficient. You remove the telephone, remain with the phone. So we have 7 options. Phone number, type of phone, number. You can even try client phone, but I think from these options, I would most likely go with mobile phone number. Might not be.
There was an option that specified mobile phone saved on the SIM card.
Mobile phone saved on the SIM card, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Assigned to save that one.
Mobile phone, yes. So mobile phone number assigned by Steam. So I think even this one is a very good option. I think for me, this one would go. And the good thing is that it's a question. That's the first thing. As you had said, there are 2 major categories of, or other classes of concepts. So you have questions, and we have questions is whereby you have a question and you expect an answer for it. And we have miscellaneous, we have drugs for drugs. So I think we're going to go through them each by each class. So for example, here we just need a phone number and the data type is text. And I would really like this one because it can accommodate non-numerical numbers, because we might have somebody, let's say, is abroad or it's somewhere who's not, which might not be the standard phone numbers. Yes. So let's pick this and see whether, okay. In the meantime, Yes, I think this is an okay number. But we can check. What happens on this point is that you try to check as many options as you can. It should not be essentially a one-time affair, like you just pick the first concept ID you get to see. So let me try to check on one more, see if we can. This is the closest, and basically I'll just try to relate it to another one, but it's also a question. So yes, so I think what is critical here is that we just simply make sure that the data type is correct. As you can see, we are having 4 numbers being questioned, so we just pick this. I've just added it to our question. So that is the client phone number. And then for ID, so I'll share my where I've updated. So as you can see, this is where I've updated for mobile phone number assigned by SIM. And as you've seen, it's a question and it's a text. So that means by extension, okay, for ID, it's good for you to have an ID name that relates very much to what the variable name. So for here, you can say client number, my client phone number. And also critically, you should not duplicate or repeat IDs in a form. That is very critical. And that's, I think, one of the things that I've changed. So we have our concept ID I've added here. We have updated our ID. For the required, this means whether this variable is mandatory or not. And there's one more thing I'm going to add here. So there's also one more, can I call it attribute of this obs, which you can say, you can call it size. Size basically denotes how the length of your text box that will allow the client phone number, and then the required. So I think for that piece we've done. So let's go to the next. That is, we can say one. Can I call it? One, then 1A. So we can call it 1A, relationship to phone owner. So it's pick one. So for this, basically we are expecting a drop down. So you can see how the variables have been input. This I don't right. So let us rectify it. Let us rectify it. So here, basically what you do is you want to add the relationship to phone owner. So basically, these are relationship type. So, and I can see you say it's relative, employer, friend, or other, and specify. So here, what we are going to do, Basically, let me give you an example of how we do it. Yeah, just below here and update it. So this is an example of how you add a drop down within the obs tag. So we can give it an ID, relationship to phone owner. And I said that this should be unique. Phone owner, concept ID. So we are going to look for a concept ID for relationship to phone owner. So this one, I'm going to leave it blank. As you can see, the style is dropped down. This is what I think a geek wanted when he did the select. So the select, this is the I think primitive HTML. But this is how you do the primitive HTML for drop downs. But here, using the form HTML form entry, you can just say style drop down. Then you're going to put concept IDs here separated by comma. So I'm going to remove this. And then you're going to put options here. So I think you can all see the differences between the primitive HTML and the form entry HTML. So basically, all these should be converted like this one. So what we are going to do, the first thing is look for this concept ID of relationship to phone owner. So again, so we are going to look for IDs for relationship to phone owners, and then you're going to look for IDs for relative, employer, friend, and other. See? So let's go to our, so these are how many concepts? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to go to my Kenya EMR and we look for concepts for this, or these 5 concepts for these particular items. So I'll go to my Kenya EMR, back to my dictionary. So you've already got the first one, which we added. Now let's go to relationship to phone owner. So you can just put the word like relationship and try to see our options. So you can see we have one here called relationship to patient. So our client, let's say the patient. So this could be one of the contenders. Let's go ahead. So I think we can very easily say that for this contact, so if you are like looking for so you can basically say you're looking for the relationship to this client. So you can click on this question coded. These are very good. So as you can see, if a data type is coded, means it expects answers. So I think that's something we learned from Anthony initially. So this would perfectly fit our scenario relationship. Added the concept ID for relationship. Then next, you're going to look for the answer relative. So just put here relative. And I want an answer. I don't want a question, but I really want an answer. So you want to say that this phone number belongs to a relative. let's see this other relative. I think this is a general patient's other relative member. This one will work for us. Add concept ID for the option relative. So the next was employer. So I'm going to look for concept ID for employer. So if this phone number belongs to the employer, so we have a very direct match called employer. So we can use this concept ID also. So for answers, you can use both coded and non-coded data types. That is miscellaneous or not applicable. So I'm going to pick this one. So you can see sometimes you'll be in luck to get a direct match. So this is for employer. So next is the friend. I'm going to look for concept ID for friend. So you see, again, we're in luck, we have a direct match for friend. Concept ID in our code for friend. So these are the options that Agik had for relationship to phone owner. Friend. So the last one was other. So basically, other was is usually there. So you can just have this other. It's called. Then we have other. All right. So let me take you back to code to see how our HTML form entry obj tag that we've just developed kind of fares with the typical HTML drop down that a gig had developed. So as you can see, we have, as you can see here, we have our obj tag here. This is the typical HTML, and this is the HTML form entry obj tag. They both give you the same. And so you simply do your ID here, your concept ID, your style, you put drop down instead of the options here. Then you have your concept IDs here, you add them. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, or options 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have here the names. That is this concept ID, 5620 is relative, employer is there, friend is there, and others. So with this, you are basically able to let's just what I'll do, just comment this piece. This is a gig piece, and we just run what we have to show you the difference. Okay. Okay. So basically, I can to let me remove this to make sure that it's different from what we have. Then okay, one more step. So let me build it once and run it. So I've built it successfully. Let's run it. So I'm running it now. For 1 minute, I'm running it.
When you're running it on KNMR,
Yes.
you just copy the OMOD file to the modules folder,
Yes, yes, yes.
and you just restart the Tomcat and
Right.
just reload KNMR.
Yes, yes.
So
So that it will take a minute, but I'm almost done. A minute, I'm almost through. Right, so it's running right now. It will take some time. So in the meantime, people can be asking questions.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes.
My question is,
Mm.
uh, I can say if we search from the dictionary, we have
Yes.
the concept ID, which is just ID, and the UID.
You can put
So,
the concept ID.
uh,
Like
can
you can
the, sorry?
like like for example, you've seen here.
Yes,
You can see we've put this one. This is the UID, and
yes.
we've put this ID. For the employer, we've put the ID.
Uh-huh.
Yes, they are interchangeable for the forms.
So you can use, and you can either use UID or the actual ID.
Yes, for this answer concept IDs.
Okay.
Yeah, but we
Oh,
for the most of the new concept they will have UIDs with letters. So that's why for readability we
le-
sometimes use the concept IDs,
okay.
but the effect will be the same.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Patrick, my question is, how are the concept dictionaries created?
How are the concept dictionaries created? Okay, as at this time, okay, let me give you the general principle is that the concept ID concept essentially should be the same. The dictionary should be the same across all our implementers and not just in Kenya. It's actually something that is international. So initially when OpenMRS came on board, I think we had our first session. There's a way to add them, but we normally prefer that it's decentralized. The
Okay.
the constraint is that if you add it's a sequential number like an auto increment. So if let's say the dictionary that you have ends with 500 and you add 501, 3, 4, and then another member or another team adds their own 500, 1, 2, 3, 4. You see, if if we share these databases, there will be conflicts. So the way it was designed is that there will be one person who will be essentially creating new concept from a centralized server and sharing these databases with us. That's why you see for each and every deployment, we normally package the database alongside it so that because we want us all to use the same database so that we can pull the same reports, we can pull the same concept IDs. You see that's the concept. For the new concepts, we normally try to use the closest as we can without having to necessarily develop new. And if you can try to count all the concepts in the concept ID, they are almost 160 something thousand. So I think in the small clinical world, you won't miss a very close match concept to what you really require because they've been developed and they have been usable, I think, across 90 something countries. We basically took the latest update of the concept dictionary and created very few to fit local local deployment. You'll be surprised you can find the one changa in the concept dictionary. So something that we try to put as many as possible. And the main principle is not to have necessarily an exact match, but to have an closest match.
So thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think they're very important questions. So it's almost completed the process.
Patrick, there's a question Ken asked in the chat.
All right, let me look at that. So I think there are two questions. So is there an issue if I don't specify the field ID? Field ID. So I think there's no problem. Actually, the IDs, the OBS IDs is to enable for you to, if you want to add logic to, let's say, this drop down, if you want to add logic to the table, if you want to add logic to the field set, that is mostly when you want to put the ID, because let's say you want to hide a table, you have to ID, you add an ID, and then on the JavaScript that we said here is for adding logic, you reference it and say for this table ID, hide it or unhide it. So for the specifically for the ID, but there will be a problem if you don't have the concept ID. So I'm not sure whether Ken was related to concept ID, but if it's a field ID, there's no problem.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Patrick.
Yes, for the field IDs, they are usually just to enable you to or rather relate or add logic to that field. That's why we use the field ID, because you need something to say this ID, where you can find this ID, do A, B, C, D. That's why you add the logic. So that's why you put the IDs. As you can see here, we've put the field set. We have a field set class. So, and you can use the class or the ID. So as you can see here, we have the field set class, we have a table ID, and we have a table class. So these ones are basically to add logic. Concept ID is to add the variable itself. And those are the differences. But field ID is basically to enable you to manipulate your features in the form. Any other questions? Those are very good questions.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes.
So let me ask you, the way you put the concept ID and the concept answers.
Okay.
So let me say when you are editing the form,
Yeah.
will the value which you inputted or you selected, will it be populated automatically, or how is it populated automatically when editing?
When editing, is it on the code or on the on your browser?
Yeah, on the browser.
On the browser. So
Yeah.
let's say you put, let's say, like, let's use an example of what we've done. We've put a concept ID for a telephone number. So on the
Yes.
browser, if you put a telephone number like 07 something something, if you, that one will always be on your obs. So that obs will be, so when you're adding and you're editing, it will never change. It will be incremental. So in the backend, that is a transactional database obs, it's always incremental. If you put today's number and let's say 0720676861, it will be that concept ID will have that number. If you edit it and change, let's say you put another 072311111111 and submit, the latest number will be that 111111. So what happens is that when you're doing the ETL, you can pick all those numbers. You can pick the latest, you can pick the first. It's a typical example is an enrollment. An enrollment might have a concept ID. So the first day you enrolled, then you discontinued, you enrolled again. We need to see that track. The same case with the obs. We need to see when you first inputted the first number, you change the second, the third, the fourth. So it will change, yes, but we'll keep all those numbers in the database such that whichever number you want, you'll be able to access. If you want to access the latest, you will get. If you want to access the first one, you'll get it. So the good thing with the concept ID, the concept will change, but the value will change, will be updated. I'm not sure whether I've answered your question.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So
thank you.
and then broadly there are some items that can change, such as the attributes. Attributes are the ones which change, and basically simple attributes are like if you change your name, you won't be able to track the former one. So so the attributes are the ones which, and mainly attributes are added during registration. So,
Okay.
but for all the orbs, you can track them.
Hello, Patrick. Meanwhile, as you wait for that to build, can you
Mhm.
do for us checkbox, example of a checkbox?
All right. Let me do it at once. Let me share my screen. So an example of a checkbox. Let me get it. I'm showing a checkbox. I'm adding a text box somewhere. All right, let me share my screen here. I think we're going to look into both. So I think we've done a drop down. We're going to do a, so you can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
What we're going to do, we are going to have a checkbox for see this second relationship here. We're going to have a checkbox for it. So this number 2 alternative phone number, and then relationship this alternative phone number. We're going to simply have a checkbox for it. So let me show you how to do it. So basically, I'm going to remove this drop down, have a checkbox for it. Yeah. So as you can see, you have to make sure that all your table data and are in order. All right, so in the order. Okay, they're in order. So this is basically how to so let's say we are going to use the same. So actually, okay, as I said, the ID is not a must. So it's a relationship to owner. We can just put something like sibling, another relationship could be, we're trying to put a different relationship. So let's say father and mother. So very quickly, I'm going to check out these IDs so that once we highlight, we'll have both of them, all of them. So this one will appear as a checkbox. So here we need a relationship concept ID. We're going to pick it up very quickly so that we just build and it will give us an answer. So I'm looking up a concept for sibling. Sibling, I have you can see the way I'm adding them. Then I'll have a concept ID for father. So we have it here. How I'm adding it. Have one for mother. Then I'm going to look for a concept ID for relationship, but I can for number. Another relationship concept. So I'm just going to add a supporter relationship type. Here it is. So I've added that one. So I think you can see the differentiating part, the way we put this, like this is a drop down, this is a checkbox. So a checkbox you have to, the way we arrange the ID, the concept ID. So what you do within the checkbox will, you have to repeat the concept ID, but have a different answer concept ID. I've just built it and run it. Okay, I'm adding. Running now. So, I think from this particular form, we can learn various items. So the way we've added the drop down, the way we've added the checkboxes, and I think down here we can have some ready. I'm looking for a ready button. So I think ready is the simplest. I think you can see how we've added a radio button. So let me format it so that it is readable. So basically, this is the way you've done a radio button. So just do concept ID, answer concept ID, answer concept IDs, their style, you say style radio, and answer label. So we can say we have got, this is the radio buttons, and up here we'll have the checkbox, And here we'll have the drop down. So in a minute, we'll be finishing to upload. In the meantime, you can have questions.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes.
I can see you've added sibling, father, and mother.
Yes.
What if they are not part of answers for the relationship? Maybe
What if
under relationship where the value coded, you only added a relative, employer, and friend, and you didn't have sibling, father, and mother. Will it still work? Or you have to go and add
yes.
them under coded?
No. For the answers, you can. You can actually even put the same answers here, down here. I'm not sure whether I'm making sense. Like you can do something like this. You can say relative, but these are relative. So let's say here employer, and then here you just say employer, and then now you add the concept for employer, the second one here, and here you put employer here. So for answers, you can have as many answers as you can have. You can repeat answers. There are so many instances where the answers would be a yes or a no. What you don't do is if you're looking, you can't like search. If you're looking, you can't search for the same variable twice unless it's a checkbox. But basically, what checkboxes mean is that you can have multiple answers of the same. You see, you are having multiple answers of the same. But if you want to have just one answer of a particular variable, you cannot duplicate it because it won't know which one to save. It will save, but it will save erroneously. So, for example, that's why I had to change this relationship from this one. You can't have the same relationship because if you save this form with the same concept ID for the both questions, it won't understand which one to save. It will save, but it will save erroneously. That's the thing. Because essentially, if you use the same concept ID, it will work as a checkbox. So you will have guys that for number one relationship to phone number and relationship to alternative phone number being the same. That's why we've differentiated the concept. Unless you want to put it as a checkbox, and I think it's typically how controls work. For checkboxes, you're allowed to have more than one answer, but for radios and drop downs, you're not allowed to have more than one answer. I think it's how the controls are typically meant to work.
Okay, that's thanks for that.
Yes. So I think that um, an overview of the control that we have, we normally have now the radios, the text boxes, the text areas, the drop downs, and yeah, basically those. But you can, I'm not sure whether there is another additional ones, but you can have additional ways of how to display them. But those are the typical ones we normally use on the forms. And they will cater for multiple answers, single answers, answers which you want to be like a yes or no, Boolean answers. All of those can be accounted by these controls. So I don't know if there's any other question. It's almost done. I think a minute or two. So, thank you, Toto. Do you have questions? As I think we are closing up today. It was a 2 hours thing. So maliza maliza malizia one more thing. Yes, one. All right. Any more questions as we try to? I think there was an issue with our TDs and TRs, which I think.
Hello, Patrick.
Yes.
Have you closed the TD for the checkbox mother?
The checkbox mother, yes. Actually, I think the checkbox mother, I think we put what was yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. As you can see, you have to be very keen.
No,
Yeah.
but
So employer is closed. So I think all of them are closed now. Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yes, that one, the mother in one, that was giving us some help. Yeah, if I think now the issue. Yes. All right, so I think now I can build it. Okay, it will take a minute. So any more questions as we try to wind up? So for this particular, we want to basically see the checkbox that you've added, the radius, the drop downs. Yes, basically that's what we want to get to see. And you've seen how they are added. The checkbox is a bit different in that the way you add it, you have to kind of repeat the concept IDs, but it's basically because how it is generically is that a checkbox seeks multiple answers of the same question. So that's why you have to repeat it. But basically, that's how it is. Let's build and see how the interface will look like. So let me share my screen here to show you a sample of the process. So you can see my screen. So essentially, you can see how we've done. So you can see I've enlarged my cell here. Initially it was 20, now it is quite huge, large, so you can afford it number you want. Here's a drop down with the changes, and here are the check boxes. So they don't have to be like this, but you can see they have check boxes. You can check all of them, two of them, one of them. You can have them dropping, you can have them horizontally. So I think those are the changes. So far, I think we've done text box. You have a text box here. We have enlarged it. You can put 20, 10. So there's an attribute I called size. So this is size 20. You can put 10 depending on your variable. We have a drop down here. We have a number here. We have a checkbox here, and we have a text area. So I think those are kind of 5 controls that we've added into a form. And I think now it's time for questions from the team. Mr. Agik, you've seen how to add a checkbox.
Yes, I've seen.
So, so this underline here is the HR piece that was there. This tag for this tag we added called HR. So you can remove it. It doesn't have to be there. You can just have the checkbox alone. You can remove it. You can just do anything. Like you can see here, we removed the HR tag. The mother on the mother checkbox, we removed the HR tag, and there's no underline. You can have it there for just to improve the appearance. You can have it on a drop, like a vertical. You can have it horizontal. Anywhere you can have it. And I'm going to push. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for that. I had a different question.
Yeah.
Like what I shared with you previously. I created using the module. I created several apps.
Okay.
But some of the forms were not wiring to the
apps.
Only I think only the social work forms were wiring. So will you show me how that one is done? Maybe there's something I did wrong.
You were to the apps. Okay, there was a number of things I realized were a bit erroneous. One of the things, can I share my module application context to show you? I think there's some 2 things I have updated. There's some 2 things I updated. You can see my screen here on the module application context. So this is a social work adult screening form that I've added. So one thing I realized is that you didn't have a unique ID, unique UUID. This ID, I've generated it and added it. So we say that each form needs a unique UUID. That's the first part. The second part that I realized, when you add the form here, can you see a geek where I'm pointing?
Yes, I can see. Yes, I can see.
Yes. So this property called apps, this basically means I want my form to be visible by this and this app. So for example, this form is visible. You see, when I'm going to the form, I usually go to home, I get the client, I go to clinician, and I get the person profile page, and I can see that form. Meaning this form is visible by clinician app and charts app. So this is where you add the apps that you want your form to be visible by. I think that's clear.
Yes, yes, that's clear.
Yes. But also make sure that each form has a unique ID, and it's the same UID you add on your exam on the metadata. So some of the things I updated, I made sure that your form is in the metadata. This is your form, social work. I added the social work encounter and added the social adult screening form, and use this UUID is the same that is in the UUID for your module application context target UUID value. And then I added that form to be, added the apps for that form to be clinician and chat, so that you simply go to the clinician and you can get it. And if you go to the chat app, you can get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's clear. Thank you for that.
Yeah, we can work with you, and it's very good. Actually, I've picked some of your work. That's what I've been using, as you can follow, and I've been updating some of the things. So this code, what I'm going to do, I just push it to where we normally push it to the Palladium repo. You can pull it back and compare between your work and what you've done, the missteps, and so that you can correct for the other forms that you've created.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And thank you and congratulations, Agik. You've really done a lot of work.
Welcome, thank you.
Any other questions as we come to a close?
I have a question on let's say you have a new module, and in this case, for instance, a PEP module. And so the form you're building, you want to add it to appear under the PEP module. So maybe just the way we have the module for PrEP. Okay. So let's say now we add a module for PEP. Now we want a form to appear under that. How would you go about that?
Okay, so I think what you simply do, you add an app. See here. You're just going to repurpose the same add-on module. Just add an app. An app basically tells you, it will have an icon on your interface. Once you add it there, and all your forms, when you're declaring your forms, you set this property called apps. You reference your app that you have created here. So let's give an example. This is the app name. If it has been used for any form, it has not been used for any form. So basically, you add it here. You add it here, and you set your property. But basically, also it will depend what you need your that module to do. Is it that you want to add the forms alone? Is it a program? Because from what I understand, it might be bigger than just the forms. As you're saying, the PEP. Is that correct? So it will depend what you really want to have your app do. But if it's only the forms, you can just have an app there, and you add your forms, and you set your app's property to the bin ID of that app. Yeah. Agik has done an example, has done one whereby the example app that we are using, it's, I think, a developed it, and basically it's set it here. And when you are trying to, each form you build, make sure that it is accessible by that app, by setting an app's property. You can try, and you can assist each other as you go ahead with it.
Okay,
So
I'll,
actually, you can clone what we have. You can reference the example app that 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 I think I developed here. You can like do something else close to this, call it PEP, and develop a form, set your property that PEP app, build, run it, and see how it is coming along. You can even push that code somewhere we can access it, and from there we can assist you develop further if you want any other features.
okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Patrick.
Any further questions?
Maybe just a further question now to that.
Okay.
Is I've seen these flags that that normally appear, like if a patient is on ART or on PrEP, there is the yellow flag up there that you're able to see. So maybe where can we configure that for it maybe to say now this patient is on PEP?
Okay. Basically, that is. Let me explain it. But you can have what I was thinking today was strictly a forms session. We have a flag session next time, a very short forms recap, and a flag session next time. For flags, you do something called a calculation. So a calculation, what it does, it calculates the people that that qualify to be in a particular cohort, and it flags it. So what you're going to do, you're going to have the next session being more on flags and a recap on the forms, and I'll show you how to do the forms. It's not very straightforward. It needs a bit of explaining. So that's why I think we could not combine it with the forms.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other question? There's no questions. I really appreciate you guys. I think I'm going to turn it back. Otieno, Otieno, are you on board? Bennett. All right. If not on board, I think I'll just open the floor for anybody with suggestions, comments, recommendations. So the floor is open for. Kirui. Wadi. All right, if there's no suggestions and comments, I want to appreciate all you guys. Thanks for the hard work we've done. I think we've come from covered quite some mileage and a lot of learning. And I hope it's going on well. We'll continue with this, and we are very open for communications. If you get stuck, you can call us and we can help you. We've already have some guys doing some work and pushing, and we're trying to assist you guys, and that's what we're here for. So I think I'm just gonna close this session unless there's any burning question at this point.
I have one question, Patrick. Still on the forms, like where would you capture maybe business rules that relate to the form? For instance, you want this form to appear maybe for adults or say for a specific gender, like it is a female form or a say adult form. Is there maybe such a business rule?
There's a business rule and it cuts across. You can say I want this form to appear for this gender or this, and you can even say this field. So it will be the form itself, the entire form, or the field. For the entire form, you need a calculation. And that is what we were planning, because the calculation does that and also does the flags piece of it. So we can do a simple calculation for the next session. And that's why I'm saying we are going to do a bit of form, like an advanced level form and the flags. So this today was basically kind of an introduction and some
Patrick.
for the forms. Yes.
Sorry, I was on another call. I'm going to understand you are looking for me.
Yes. I'm just finishing up. So I was just explaining, finishing on one of the questions that has been asked about. We call it eligibility criteria. So that's, we are going to cover the eligibility criteria next time, and it will be basically, it's a calculation that will make somebody view a form or not view the form, and it's also part of the criteria used on the flags. So today was the advanced form. It was just the introduction on the forms, how to do the various controls. Next we'll have that eligibility and the flags as kind of the advanced piece of the forms. We're going to build up on what we've done actually today. So as you've seen, today was a social work adult screening form. So it's meant for adults. So next time you're going to see how you're going to have it visible for adults and not visible for children. Am I clear?
Yeah, that's clear.
Yes.
Okay. So you are kind of done?
Yes, I'm done. So I think we'll set that the next time we're going to actually focus on two areas. We are going to focus on flags and eligibility criteria.
And the eligibility.
All based on, yes, which are all based on calculations. So next session will be on calculations.
Okay. All right, so I think then I want to take the opportunity then to thank Patrick for the session. I think the attendance is dropping by each session, so I'm wondering, when before we started, we were wondering whether it is still of value to do this every week, or how is the team feeling? Do we stagger it by week? We do it after every other week, or we still maintain every Thursday?
Hello, yes, Tiano.
Yeah.
I think we can continue maybe for the next 2 weeks. Then after that, we can now consider maybe skipping like a week or two like that. That's my view.
So yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't know if there is anyone else who has a contrary opinion on the same. Okay, so seems like every week still works for the next 2 weeks. So then I think we need to kind of log into the class a little bit on time so that we can save on time as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending. So let's meet again next week on Thursday. The logging and the invitation link still remains the same. So let's see you again next week on Thursday. For those who have not self-introduced on the chat window, kindly do so before kindly do so before you log out. Otherwise, for the rest of the team, you'll get the recording on our official YouTube channel. So thank you very much and have a good day.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
too. Have a good day.
Thank you.